This is like a scene from a Cold War spy movie. Here you can see a North Korean defector running from that jeep, running for his life as North Korean soldiers follow him and open fire.
Critically wounded, these infrared images show what happens next. South Korean soldiers stay low, avoiding fire, crawling towards the defector. That is him lying still. They carry him out, away from the danger, and off to a nearby medical center.
November 13th, 2017. A North Korean soldier hits the gas pedal of a stolen Jeep and floors it straight toward the world's most heavily armed border. 4 of his own comrades open fire, 40 bullets, 5 hits, and a determination that changed the course of his life. Forever. These are the most insane escapes from North Korea of all time.
This is you running for your life.
I still can't believe it's me, Oh Chong-song says. Every time I watch the video, he says, I realize that I am alive is a miracle.
The Jeep had to crash. That was the only thing that wasn't part of the plan. 24-year-old Sergeant Oh Chong-song was a driver attached to the North Korean General Staff at the JSA, the son of a major general, a guy with K-pop on his mind and worms in his stomach. And on November 13th, 2017, he decided he was done. He hit the accelerator and aimed his Jeep at the most fortified border on Earth. Then he hit a ditch. The vehicle lurched, lost a wheel, and came to a dead stop just feet from the line. Chong-song kicked the door open and started running. His own comrades came out of nowhere. 4 North Korean soldiers, AK-47s up, pistols drawn. They didn't yell, they didn't warn him, they just opened fire. 40 rounds split the air. 1 North Korean soldier crossed the border in the chaos, breaking the armistice that ended the Korean War. Chong-song took bullets to the elbow, shoulder, chest, back, and hip. He lost more than half his blood, but somehow, he made it across. South Korean soldiers found him crumpled in a pile of leaves, bleeding out under a low wall. They crawled on their bellies through the dirt to drag him to safety. A U.S. Black Hawk airlifted him to a Zhou University hospital, where trauma surgeon Lee Cook-jong was waiting. That's where the story got even darker. Dr. Lee said Oh was like a broken jar. They couldn't pump blood into him fast enough. During a 5-hour surgery to dig the bullets out of his perforated intestines, Lee saw something that stopped him cold, something he'd only ever read about in textbooks. His next words would shock the world. Dozens of parasitic roundworms, white, thick, one of them nearly 11 inches long. They were wriggling out of his bowel system. One species of worm Lee pulled out is normally only found in dogs. The parasites told the world what North Korea had been hiding for decades. Their soldiers were starving. Their fertilizer was human waste. Their healthcare was a textbook from 1953. Chong-song survived. He woke up in the ICU, and his first request wasn't water. It wasn't even his family. He asked for a choco pie and put on K-pop. Score! But it didn't have the ending you'd expect. 2 years later, in January 2020, Oh Chong-song was arrested in Seoul for drunk driving. He survived the most violent escape in modern Korean history, just to get a DUI.
We were woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning and were forced to work straight away. Apart from the mealtime breaks, we worked all day long until into the night.
Most people are born into families. Shin Dong-hyuk was born into a sentence, January 2nd, 2005. A 23-year-old prisoner clawed his way to the top of a 1,200-foot mountain ridge in North Korea. Snow on the ground, an electrified fence between him and the rest of the world, and the only way out was through the body of his dead friend. To understand how it got to this, you have to understand where Shin came from. He wasn't sent to Camp 14, he was born there. The result of what the regime called a reward marriage between 2 prisoners who weren't even allowed to live together. 3 generations of his family were locked inside for one relative's crime decades earlier. Shin grew up watching teachers beat children to death over kernels of corn. He thought everyone in the world lived behind an electrified fence. He didn't know America existed. He didn't know the earth was round.
We worked from the moment we opened our eyes until we went to bed.
At 14, he overheard his mother and brother planning to escape. He did what any loyal prisoner would do. He reported them. The guards arrested him anyway. They tortured him. They hung him over a charcoal fire on a meat hook through his stomach. Then they made him watch his mother get hanged and his brother get shot. He felt nothing. He thought they deserved it for breaking the rules. That was Shin's normal.
After coming to South Korea, as I began to learn how to live a normal life, as I started to become more like an ordinary person, the guilt overwhelmed me of what I did to my family.
Then a man named Park Yong-chul transferred into Camp 14. Uncle Park had lived in Pyongyang. He had eaten meat. He told Shin about grilled chicken, about cars, about a world. For the first time in his life, Shin wanted out. January 2nd, 2005. The two of them were sent to gather firewood near the perimeter. Shin slipped in the snow. Park made it to the fence first and lunged through the gap between the wires. The voltage caught him, 22,000 volts. Park's body went rigid and stuck to the wires. Shin had seconds. Behind him, guards were closing in. Ahead of him, his only friend was already dead, frozen between strands of electrified steel. So he climbed over him. He used Park's body as insulation. His friend became a bridge. Shin's lower legs touched the live wires anyway. They burned from knee to ankle. And to this day, he still has the scars. He bribed his way to the Tumen River with cigarettes and stolen food. He crossed into China and eventually reached South Korea, becoming the only person ever known to be born in a total control zone camp who escaped to tell the story. However, in 2015, Shin admitted he had embellished some timeline details and that he had actually been transferred between camps. The fence climb, though, he never recanted. Some parts of a man's story can be edited, but the scars on his legs cannot. If you thought that was brutal, the next escape involves a 13-year-old, a frozen river, and a mother who paid a price no daughter should ever witness.
You do not own yourself in North Korea. You are owned by the state.
Yeonmi Park was born in Hyesan in 1993. Her father was a mid-level Workers' Party member who supplemented the family income by smuggling metals. In 2002, he got arrested. The state slapped him with 17 years in a labor camp. Yeonmi's older sister, Yeonmi, vanished one day in 2007, fled to China without telling anyone. That left Yeonmi, age 13, and her mother, starving, terrified, with one option left.
Regime decides what we read, what we watch, what we listen to, how we even dance. They control how you move your body. So if you wear your jeans, you go to prison. Because jeans are the symbol of capitalism. Literally, people get executed.
March 30th, 2007. Mother and daughter crossed the partially frozen Yalu River at night. They had paid brokers to get them across. What they didn't know was that the brokers weren't smugglers. They were human traffickers. The moment Yeonmi and her mother set foot on Chinese soil, the broker demanded sex with the 13-year-old. What Yeonmi's mother did next, she carries with her forever. For 2 years, Yeonmi and her mother were trapped in China, sold and resold. Eventually, missionaries found them and offered a way out. But the only path led through the Gobi Desert into Mongolia. In the middle of winter, on foot, at night. She was 15 years old. She carried a compass, a flashlight, and a razor blade. The razor wasn't for protection. If she got caught and sent back, she had a plan. She would not go back. She would not be repatriated. The razor was insurance. She and her mother walked across the Gobi guided by the stars, the Big Dipper above them, the North Star pointing the way out. When they finally reached the Mongolian border, the guards threatened to deport them anyway. Mother and daughter pulled out their razors and prepared to slit their own wrists in front of the soldiers. A suicide pact, right there in the dirt. The guards backed down. There was one more twist in this story. Yeonmi's father, the one rotting in the labor camp, bribed his way out and crossed into China to find them. He had untreated colon cancer from years of prison food. He died in China. They buried him in secret. And years later, in South Korea, Yeonmi was reunited with the sister who disappeared, the one she thought she'd never see again. She wrote a book. She built a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. The little girl who crossed a desert with a razor blade is now one of North Korea's loudest critics.
Soon after, when I was walking past the train station, I saw something terrible that it can't erase from my memory. A lifeless woman was lying on the ground, but nobody helped them because they were so focused on taking care of themselves and their families.
Some people escaped North Korea once. Hyun-seo Lee escaped, then went back. On purpose. In 1997 at 17, she crossed the frozen Yalu, thinking it was a short adventure. Her mother called from across the border and told her something that ended her childhood in a single sentence. Don't come back. The reprisals for what Hyun-seo had done would kill her family, so she vanished into China and lived as a ghost for 10 years. She studied Mandarin until she sounded native. She built 7 different identities. She gave herself 7 different names. That's the title of her best-selling book, The Girl with 7 Names. In 2008, she finally made it to South Korea. Then she did the unthinkable. She went back. In 2009, she smuggled her mother and younger brother out of North Korea and into China. From there, the route to safety ran 2,000 miles south, through Vietnam, into Laos. That's where everything went wrong. In Vientiane, the capital of Laos, her family was arrested. The bribes to free them kept escalating. Yeon-seo emptied her bank account. Then she emptied her future. Then she ran out of money. She sat on a Vientiane street, alone, watching her family rot in a Laotian jail. After 50 days, she had nothing left to give. That's when a stranger walked up. His name was Dick Stolp, an Australian backpacker. He didn't know her. He didn't speak Korean. He asked what was wrong, and Yeon-seo, using a dictionary, explained. He walked to an ATM and paid the rest of the bribes, every last dollar. He freed her mother, her brother, and 2 other North Koreans she had never even met. Years later, in 2013, an Australian TV show flew them both into a studio. Yeon-seo got to thank him in person. She called him a modern hero. He shrugged it off. She has since spoken at the United Nations. Her TED Talk has been watched over 27 million times, and every word of it traces back to one stranger with an ATM card in Laos.
이 사회는 도저히 희망이 없다. 이 사회에서 이 사회를 바꿀 수가 있는 상황이 못 된다. 그러니까 밖에 엄청 넓고 자유의 세상이 있다. 그러니까 한국을 가자. 저희 아버님이 그 말씀을 처음으로 하셨거든요.
What if escaping wasn't a decision, but a 10-year project? What if you had to teach your wife to walk across a minefield? What if you had to hide your kids in burlap sacks? Meet the Kim family. 2 brothers, Kim Il-hyuk and Kim Yi-hyuk. Their late father had told them years before he died,
"There is no hope in this society. The ocean is your only escape route."
He left them his savings. And he left them a plan. Kim Yi-hyuk, the younger brother, moved to the coast. He spent 4 years learning to fish. He bought his own boat. He modified the engine to run silent. He bribed local night watchmen for years. He ran simulations. How fast do North Korean patrols respond on a clear day? On a stormy day? At night? In rain? The brothers learned that storms killed radar visibility. Patrols slowed in bad weather. Their target wasn't speed, it was disappearance. Back at the family home, they installed a hidden copper wire antenna to watch South Korean TV. They saw electricity at night. They saw food. They saw a different world. May 6th, 2023, a 3-day spring storm rolled across the Yellow Sea. The brothers made the call. Tonight, 9 people, 2 brothers, their mother, Il-hyuk's wife, 5 months pregnant. Yi Yak's wife, their 2 children, ages 4 and 6, the mother-in-law, the brother-in-law. They carried their father's ashes with them. But there was a problem. North Korean law treats any woman boarding a boat as a defection attempt. The women couldn't walk on board with everyone else. They had to walk across a minefield instead. The 4 and 6-year-old kids were hidden in burlap sacks. The boat slipped past the patrols. Engine muffled. Lights off. For 2 hours, they sailed across the most dangerous stretch of water on the Korean peninsula. Near Yeonpyeong Island, Kim Il-hyuk finally flipped on a searchlight. A South Korean Navy ship approached. They asked the family if their engine had broken down. The reply was simple. "We are North Korean fishermen here to defect to South Korea." 4 months later, Il-hyuk's daughter Yeri was born safely in the South. Everything was perfect. Then tragedy. Kim Yi-hyuk, the younger brother who spent a decade learning the sea, died in a scuba diving accident just months after reaching freedom. 9 people fled. Only 8 are alive today. Just like Oh Chong-song, this next defection ended with bodies. A lot more bodies. September 17, 1996. A taxi driver near the city of Gangneung on the east coast of South Korea spotted something strange on a coastal road at 1:30 in the morning. A group of men huddled in the dark, dressed wrong. He called the police. What he had spotted was the start of South Korea's biggest post-war manhunt. A 111-foot North Korean Sang-ho-class spy submarine had run aground on a reef trying to retrieve 3 commandos who had been photographing South Korean military bases. The mission was bigger than recon. They were preparing to assassinate the South Korean president during the National Sports Festival the next month. When the sub couldn't escape, the crew set it on fire and ran into the mountains. South Korea sent 40,000 soldiers to hunt them down. What happened next was nightmare fuel. When South Korean troops climbed the mountain ridge the next day, they found 11 bodies in a neat row, all shot in the head at close range. White t-shirts, tennis shoes. The Reconnaissance Bureau commandos had executed their own submarine crew. They didn't want regular sailors captured alive, so they lined them up and shot every single one. The manhunt lasted 49 days. The commandos stabbed 3 civilian mushroom pickers to death. They strangled a South Korean army private and put on his uniform. 12 South Korean soldiers died trying to catch them. 24 North Koreans died, most by their own hand, or each other's. And then there's this detail. Somewhere in the middle of being hunted by 40,000 troops, 2 of the commandos broke into a ski resort and spent the night playing video games. They lived in a hand-dug mountain shelter for 2 weeks before they died. Only one man surrendered alive. The helmsman. His name was Lee Kwang-soo. What he did next was the twist nobody saw coming. Lee was interrogated. The South Koreans broke him with 4 bottles of soju. And then he defected. He joined the South Korean Navy. As an intelligence instructor, the man who steered the spy submarine into South Korean waters spent the rest of his career teaching the South Koreans how to catch the next one. His wife, his 3-year-old son, his parents, and his siblings back home were all sent to prison camps. The submarine itself? It's now a tourist attraction in Gangneung. You can walk through it. Some escapes use a frozen river, some use a fishing boat. This one used a Soviet fighter jet.
Just weeks after the end of the Korean War, a North Korean fighter pilot escapes that oppressive regime and delivers a Soviet fighter jet to the Americans.
I'm so lucky that I succeeded escaping that place. Suppose I didn't escape at that time, I'm sure I'm dead by now.
September 21st, 1953, just 2 months after the Korean War armistice, a North Korean MiG-15 broke formation over Manchuria and dove low to escape radar. Inside the cockpit was 21-year-old Senior Lieutenant No Kum-sok. He hated the regime. He had been faking love for Kim Il-sung since he was a child. And today, he was going to fly a Soviet jet straight into an American airbase. 17 minutes, 620 miles per hour. He flew in from the wrong direction at Gimpo-I, our base, almost colliding with an American F-86 Sabre on final approach. Pilots scrambled to their cockpits. Anti-aircraft guns swung toward the sky. He taxied between two parked Sabres. He climbed out. He tore up the photo of Kim Il-sung he had been forced to keep in his cockpit, and then he put his hands up. The Americans were stunned. The radar at Gimpo had been offline that morning for routine maintenance. The defection had a 1 in a million window, and no Kumsak had flown through it without even knowing. But there was something he didn't know. Something nobody had told him. Months earlier, the Americans had launched Operation Moolah, a secret bounty offering $100,000 to any communist pilot who delivered a working MiG-15 to the West. Leaflets had been dropped over North Korea. No one had ever seen them. He had just become the richest defector in Cold War history. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $1.25 million today. He flew because he hated the regime, not for the money. The check was a bonus. The MiG was test flown by Chuck Yeager. It now sits in the U.S. Air Force Museum. Back home, his best friend and 4 other pilots and commanders were executed. No Kumsak became a U.S. citizen named Kenneth Rowe. He worked as an aerospace engineer for Grumman and Lockheed. He died peacefully in Florida in 2022, age 90. He flew a jet into an enemy airbase and walked out a millionaire. They don't write Cold War movies like this anymore. This next escape goes the wrong way and then comes back. Buckle up.
Thinking back now, I was a fool. If there's a God in heaven, he carried me through it.
Robert, if God in heaven carried you through it, you ended up in hell.
That's it. I got my punishment.
January 1965. A 24-year-old American soldier from rural North Carolina was patrolling the DMZ. His name was Sergeant Charles Robert Jenkins. He was drunk on 10 beers, terrified of being sent to Vietnam, and convinced he had a plan. He would walk across the DMZ. The Soviets would catch him. They would trade him back to the United States. And he'd never have to go to Vietnam? He walked across the DMZ. Nobody traded him back. Jenkins spent the next 39 years as a propaganda trophy of the Kim regime. They cut off part of his U.S. Army tattoo without anesthesia. They forced him to play the evil American doctor, Dr. Kelton, in propaganda films. They made him teach English to North Korean spies. In 1980, the regime gave him a wife. Her name was Hitomi Soga. She was a 21-year-old Japanese student nurse who had been kidnapped from her home on Sado Island in Japan 2 years earlier. North Korea was abducting Japanese citizens to train its spies in proper Japanese. Within 2 weeks of meeting, Charles and Hitomi were forced to marry. Then something nobody planned on happened. They fell in love. 2 captives, bonded by hatred of their captors. They had 2 daughters, Mika and Brenda. Every night before bed, Jenkins said Oyasumi, Japanese for good night. Hitomi replied in English. They did it so they would never forget who they really were. In 2002, Japan and North Korea cut a deal. Hitomi was allowed to visit Japan for 10 days. She never went back. Jenkins stayed behind because the U.S. Army still wanted him for desertion. He could be arrested. The statute of limitations was January the 5th, 2005. He had less than 3 years to escape or stay in North Korea forever.
Did you think you made a mistake?
Yes. You have made a mistake. A lot of mistakes in my life, maybe. But that was the worst mistake anybody ever make.
Then Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi got involved. He personally negotiated with Pyongyang. On July 9, 2004, Jenkins and his 2 daughters flew out of North Korea to Jakarta, Indonesia. Indonesia was chosen because it had no extradition treaty with the United States. When the family stepped off the plane, Hitomi was waiting. Of the 4 American soldiers who defected to North Korea in the 1960s, Charles Robert Jenkins was the only one who ever got out. He was court-martialed, served 25 days, and got a dishonorable discharge. He spent the rest of his life on Sado Island, where his wife had been kidnapped from, working at a tourist shop, terrified Pyongyang would come for him. He died in 2017, 39 years prisoner, 13 years free. The math of his life never quite balanced. Some escapes happen on jets, Some happen on submarines. This one happened on a 2-year-old's tear-streaked face in front of a Japanese consulate, while the world watched. May 8, 2002. 2 in the afternoon, 5 members of one family from 3 generations sprinted toward the gate of the Japanese Consulate General in Shenyang, China. The grandmother had defected from North Korea 4 years earlier. The rest of the family had been arrested and repatriated by China over and over again. This was their last shot at freedom. The 2 men made it inside the visa office. The grandmother, the mother, and the 2-year-old daughter, Kim Han-mai, were tackled by Chinese police at the gate. A camera, pre-positioned in a building across the street, captured everything. The footage was viral before viral existed. The world watched a Chinese police officer pin a North Korean mother to the ground while her 2-year-old daughter wailed inches away. The world watched Japanese consulate staff stand in their own doorway and do nothing. One Japanese staffer was kind enough to pick up a Chinese cop's fallen hat and hand it back to him. It played on every Japanese network for weeks. Foreign Minister Yoriko Kawaguchi called it a clear violation of international law. The Japanese ambassador to China was accused of giving the police permission to enter. Anti-China protests swept Japanese streets. After 2 weeks of diplomatic standoff, China blinked. The family of 5 was put on a plane to the Philippines, then to Seoul. The viral toddler Kim Han-mi grew up in South Korea. Her family met President George W. Bush at the White House in 2006. She would now be in her mid-20s. One mother got tackled by a cop. One toddler cried on camera. And 5 North Koreans walked out of China. The last escape on this list is the strangest of all. Because Kim Ryan-hee did everything right. She escaped North Korea. She reached the safety of South Korea. And then she spent a decade trying to go back. In 2011, Kim Ryan-hee was a 45-year-old seamstress from Pyongyang. She had a husband, a daughter, a new government-issued apartment, liver cirrhosis. She traveled to China for medical treatment. A broker in China told her she could earn enough money for her treatment by working in South Korea for 2 or 3 months. Then she could come right back. She agreed. When she got to South Korea, she learned the truth. Once you defect, the law won't let you go back. Ever. Her daughter was 16 years old back in Pyongyang. Kim Ryan-hee would never see her again, so she did something no defector had ever done. She launched a public campaign to be sent home. She begged South Korea's National Intelligence Service to deport her. They refused. She went on hunger strike. They force-fed her. She protested at the United Nations. She disrupted press conferences. In February 2018, the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, North Korean art performers came to Seoul to perform. As their buses left for the border, Kim Ryan-hee sprinted toward them past police, waving a unified Korea flag, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Farewell, girls. I am Kim Ryan-hee, a citizen of Pyongyang." The North Korean performers looked confused. The South Korean police dragged her back. Later that year, she was arrested for attempting to send 130 tons of rice to North Korea. Every defector on this list risked everything to get out. Kim Ryan-hee risked everything to get back in. She still hasn't made it home.